Picture the confrontation. Rome's legions marching in ordered ranks against Sparta's unbreakable phalanxes. A conflict that history never saw, but one that legends still desire. The iron-shod power of Rome, continent conqueror, against the unconquerable will of Sparta, tempered in fire and sacrifice. It is a contest that ought to have occurred. Two warrior civilizations, each the epitome of military discipline in their time, fated to pit their strength against the other. And yet, it never did. Here rests history's own paradox. Sparta and Rome, twin titans of the ancient world, never clashed swords in battle. One ascended as the other declined, their periods of glory separated by centuries. Was it just timing, the bitter math of history, or was there something more profound? A mutual respect for order, discipline, and the cult of the warrior that prevented them from ever being proper rivals. Why were these two armies, so similar in their martial spirit, never encountered on the battlefield? The answer is more interesting than any make-believe war. It is a story of missed timings, cultural admiration, and the unspoken irony that Sparta, the war-lived city, was saved destruction by the empire that conquered the world. What secrets are to be found within this silence behind spears and shields? Let us discover them. Sparta's golden age, 5th century BC. It is the year 480 BC. 300 Spartan fighters stand back-to-back in Thermopylae, a pass of cliffs and sea, their bronze shields locked together like the scales of some mythical creature. Against them the Persian Empire's boundless wave, a host so numerous, according to Herodotus, it drank rivers dry. For 3 days King Leonidas and his Spartans stand firm, their spears cracking like bolts of lightning into the invaders. This was Sparta at the height of its power, a culture in which every citizen was a weapon, tempered by the harsh agoge training system that made boys men and girls the mothers of men. But all this military perfection was at a price. Sparta's whole social organization, a small elite dominating a vast ocean of helots in bondage, was as unyielding as its phalanx formations. As Spartan youth were taught to steal and fight, Rome was as yet a muddy village along the Tiber, fighting against Etruscan warlords and Sabine raiders. The contrast was extreme. Sparta, the highly polished Greek blade, against Rome, the rough-hewn Italian axe. Rome's rise, 3rd to 2nd century BC. Flash forward 2 centuries. Carthage is in smoldering ruins, its fields salted by Roman wrath. The legions, toughened by the horrors of the Punic Wars, now look east, where Sparta's glory has worn off like paint on a weathered statue. By 146 BC, Rome shows its new supremacy by leveling Corinth to the ground. The message is unmistakable. Resistance is destruction. But when Rome looks upon Sparta, something magical occurs. The city that once defied Persia now is a shadow, its numbers thinned, its institutions fossilized. Where Spartan kings once commanded 10,000 soldiers, now fewer than 700 citizens exist. The iron rigor of Lycurgus laws has corroded. The terrifying agoge churns out more philosophers than warriors. When Roman general Lucius Mummius looks out at the Peloponnese, he does not see a threat, but a relic, something to be preserved, not destroyed. The torch of military dominance had passed. Sparta's day had ended not with a conflict of arms, but with a sigh of history. Rome, the rough-around-the-edges underdog turned behemoth, now occupied the space where Sparta had, but would it avoid the mistakes of Sparta? The answer would define empires for centuries to come. The Battle of Leuctra in 371 BC saw the start of Sparta's irreversible decline. When the Theban general Epaminondas broke the Spartan phalanx with innovative tactics, he did more than claim a victory. He demolished a legend. The supposedly invincible Spartan army, which had dominated Greece for generations, was made mortal. The loss precipitated a chain reaction of disasters. Helot rebellions bled Sparta of men, while its unyielding social system proved inflexible and unable to change. When Rome had risen to power in the Mediterranean, Sparta was already an empty husk of what it had been, still arrogant, but no longer intimidating. Rome's ascendancy followed the reverse pattern. While Sparta declined, Rome was beating Pyrrhus, 280 to 275 BC, overrunning Carthage during the Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BC, and methodically conquering the Hellenistic world. When Roman armies finally invaded Greece in the 2nd century BC, they found a Sparta more curiosity than threat. The Romans, always pragmatic, perceived no merit in destroying that which no longer posed a threat to them. The timing was harsh but decisive. When Sparta was at its height in the 5th century BC, Rome was a small city-state. When Rome was at its height, Sparta was already an open-air museum. Their power curves never crossed at a point where war made sense. Rome overcame threats. Sparta, by then, was just a curiosity. Its greatest battles already won, its heroes already legends. The two greatest war states in history were bound to be ships passing in the night of antiquity. Rome's own relationship with Sparta subverted the normal conqueror-conquered relationship. Instead of destroying its fated competitor, Rome adopted Sparta as a living memorial to martial virtue. Plutarch idealized this respect when he described Lycurgus' laws as having been engraved on iron, not on stone, an acknowledgement of Sparta's lasting legacy even after its political influence had faded. Roman patricians, more and more concerned at the decadence of their own society, found themselves drawn to Sparta as an example of discipline. Wealthy patrician families sent their sons off to Sparta to survive the last vestiges of the agoge training in the hope that exposure to Spartan austerity would antidote the corrupting luxuries of Rome. Cicero reported how young Romans came back from Sparta, hardened in body and tempered in spirit, their character molded by what remained of the great Spartan way. The similarities between Spartan and Roman values went deep. The agoge and Roman virtus shared a similar philosophy. Both regarded suffering as education and honor as a kind of immortality. Spartan boys were trained to withstand floggings without crying out. Roman cadets marched for days with full packs. The famous Spartan mother's dictum to her son, "Return with your shield or on it," had its echo in the Roman belief of dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. Even Rome's warfare organization bore witness to Spartan domination. The phalanx outclassing maneuverability of the manipular legion was certainly exceptional, but discipline and cohesiveness were paid for with borrowed Spartan coins. Polybius noted that Roman commanders read Greek campaigns, picking up on the lessons of Spartan morale and cohesiveness within units. This cultural borrowing culminated in reigns such as Marcus Aurelius, who patterned his own philosophy along Spartan lines of self-abnegation. By the imperial period, Sparta was more a moral paragon than a historical adversary, and a paradox that had Rome politically supreme while culturally in debt to the city it never had to conquer. Let us recreate history for a moment. The date is 200 BC in the Peloponnese. The Spartan phalanx doesn't move, a bronze iron wall 8 men thick, their long dory spears bristling like the quills of some mythical creature. Opposite them, Roman maniples flow with feline movement, segmented armor catching the sun as they move with unnerving fluidity. This is the conflict that never occurred, Sparta's honed killing machine versus Rome's adaptation war machine. The confrontation would have been a study in contrasts. The Spartan phalanx, appalling in frontal impact, but weak on uneven ground, is the peak of Greek warcraft, a monolithic, crippling hammer blow. The Roman manipular legion, with checkerboard deployment and alternating lines of fresh men, is a new model of tactical fluidity. Where the phalanx relies on unbreakable cohesion, the legion feasts on its opposite, breaking up and regrouping like liquid metal. At first, in a first encounter on level terrain, Sparta may get the better. The phalanx's impact could shatter the Roman front ranks, as it had so many Greek enemies. But war is not won by individual battles. Rome's real power was in its merciless ability to persevere, what today's strategists would term depth of warfare. While Sparta was a dagger, deadly in one ideal stab, Rome was a siege engine, patient and unstoppable. After months of campaigning, the balance would turn decisively in their favor. Roman logistics, roads, supply trains, naval support would choke Sparta's resource base. The legion's capacity to absorb casualties and refill ranks would wear down Sparta's diminishing citizen soldiers. At last, the phalanx's stylistic perfection would turn against it, unable to modify as Roman engineers imposed battles on shattered terrain or bypassed Spartan fortifications. The outcome of the endgame is obvious in retrospect. Sparta may fight breathtaking battles, but Rome would emerge victorious in the war. As with Thebes before them, the Romans would eventually discover the phalanx's vulnerability, maybe at some new Leuctra where maneuverable maniples bypassed the Spartan line. The ultimate irony? Rome's triumph would most likely leave Sparta as a figurative trophy, as they did in fact in real life, a monument to their admiration for the enemy they never really fought at full capacity. This fictional clash unmasks a basic truth. Sparta embodied war's past, Rome its future. The phalanx's rigidity preceded the combined arms warfare that would rule battlefields for centuries, while the legion's adaptability presaged tactics that would not be fully equaled until after World War I. Their hypothetical confrontation represents a turning point in the evolution of war, when the art of war was forever altered. When Roman legions, led by Lucius Mummius, destroyed the Achaean League in 146 BC, their treatment of Sparta indicated a compelling historical irony. Whereas Corinth was torn apart systematically, its men killed, women enslaved, and valuable artworks transported to Rome, Sparta escaped the flames. This was not an accident, but a decision. As biographer Plutarch wrote, the Romans kept Sparta intact as one preserves a venerable trophy, its very existence a monument to their magnanimity. The contrast could not have been greater. While Corinth's remains stood as a warning, Sparta's ongoing, if reduced, independence acted as propaganda. Roman commanders appreciated the symbolic value of leaving Leonidas' city alive, even while they eliminated other Greek resistance. A surviving eyewitness account from Senator Gaius Popilius illustrates this perfectly. Let Sparta keep its myths, we'll keep the world. Their stories make our mercy shine brighter. Archaeological records indicate that Sparta under Roman control became a strange hybrid, half-working city, half-living museum. Affluent Romans journeyed to view the remains of the Agorge training grounds and temple of Artemis Orthia, where Spartan youths survived their harsh initiation ceremonies. Guides would perform the Pyrrhic war dances for tourists, and Roman moralists such as Cato would point to the ruins of Sparta as warnings about the perils of rigidity. This last chapter discloses the extent of Rome's political brilliance. By maintaining Sparta's empty husk, while annihilating real threats such as Corinth and Carthage, they turned their greatest what if into a propaganda weapon. Evidence that Rome could conquer not only territories, but history itself. The city that once defied Persia now became a meticulously staged exhibit in Rome's imperial history, its martial ethos domesticated into tourist spectacle. The story of Rome and Sparta transcends millennia to our contemporary era of changing powers. As Sparta, the superpowers today can decline, their economic supremacy waning, their military strength threatened. But the lessons they developed remain. We continue to evoke Spartan living and Roman discipline as ideals, testifying that cultural legacy survives political control. History's irony is their posthumous fame. Rome constructed the empire that defined Western civilization, but Sparta's myth glows in our shared consciousness. Hollywood preserves Thermopylae 300, and Rome's empire building is museum fare. Today's militaries study both, But special operations forces everywhere draw inspiration from Sparta's fighting man culture rather than Rome's imperial supply train. Ultimately, Rome conquered the empire, but Sparta conquered the legend. The city that defied change became immortal as the very symbol of defiance. Their unresolved rivalry reminds us that real legacy is not gauged in land held, but in ideals recalled. As our own time's powers rise and fall, Sparta and Rome remind us, empires come and go, but legends endure. The discipline to confront overwhelming odds, whether at Thermopylae or in challenges today, remains humanity's most lasting tool.